Desperately and gallantly, the two brigades still east of the river fought to break through to the Great Sittang Railway Bridge, held by their comrades. Their only hope of getting their vehicles, and indeed themselves, over the 600-yard-wide stream. Then came tragedy. Field Marshal Sir William Slim. On February 22, 1942, British forces in Burma, mainly the 17th Indian Infantry Division, retreated in the face of a relentless advance by Imperial Japanese forces. The division had already given everything it had at the Battle of Bilin River, and now its exhausted and disheartened members fell back to the Sittang Bridge under heavy enemy artillery fire. Unfortunately, the order was given to blow up the bridge before it could be seized by the Japanese, a decision which stranded nearly half of the 17th Division on the wrong side. Imperial Japan was initially interested in conquering Burma for its raw materials. This included exploiting the oil fields near the city of Yan'an-Chao and rice fields throughout Burma to provide food for Japanese soldiers. Eventually, the strategic value of Burma's proximity to both China and India began to influence the Imperial Army's wartime occupation strategy. Taking control of Rangoon would provide the Imperial Army an opportunity to cut off Allied forces from the land link to China, preventing them from providing aid via supply routes to Chiang Kai-shek's Kuomintang forces. Furthermore, the occupation of Rangoon, and Burma as a whole, would enable the Japanese to launch attacks against British forces stationed in India. With the Indian states of Manipur and Assam within reach, the Japanese hoped to defeat Indian and British forces there and ultimately cut off British influence in Asia. 8 days after the conquest of Singapore, on February 15, 1942, and the surrender of 80,000 British and Allied troops, Japanese forces continued their successful advance into Burma and set their sights on Rangoon. After defeating the 17th Indian Division on the Salween River, 95 miles east of Rangoon, due in large part to multiple river fords the Imperial Army was able to easily cross, the Japanese forced the division back to the Sittang River, now 65 miles northeast of Rangoon. With the withdrawal to Sittang, the line of communication to China was cut, effectively allowing the northbound road and railroad out of Rangoon to come under Japanese artillery fire. Under the strain of continuous Japanese attacks, major problems for the British and Allied forces began to reveal themselves. Coordination of Allied infantry units was poor, air support was non-existent, supplies were running low, and retreating units were dogged by vehicle breakdowns and equipment failures. None of the division's 3 Indian brigades had trained at the brigade level, nor had the division trained as a whole. Tactically, the British would have been better off to have concentrated their forces, but strategically, they needed to engage the Japanese as far forward as possible to gain time. Strategy won out over tactics, and the decision to spread troops across a wide front to engage the Japanese as far forward as possible proved to be a poor one. After failing to establish a strong bridgehead on the eastern, Japanese side of the bridge, Major General Jackie Smith ordered it destroyed, cutting off half of his division on the far side of the river. With no means to cross the river, they fought a desperate battle for survival. Later, on February 22, 1942, survivors of the 17th Division swam and ferried themselves over the Sittang River in broad daylight, slipped away, and headed north. The defeat of the 17th Division effectively opened Rangoon and eventually all of southern Burma to conquest by the Imperial Japanese Army. Smith was immediately dismissed by Commander-in-Chief, India, General Sir Archibald Wavell. Brigadier General Punch Cohen took his place in commanding the remaining survivors. Smith never received another command. Following the Battle of the Sittang Bridge, the 17th Division could muster merely 3,500 men, or only 40% of its original strength. After further combat actions at the Battle of Pago and the Tung Kau roadblock, remaining efforts by the Australian, British, Dutch, American command to prevent further Japanese advances failed, and Rangoon fell to Japanese control on March 8, 1942.